Hello and welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. We do this on a regular basis, usually once a week, and we give you an opportunity for questions and answers. This is something that we do on a regular basis when we are open. During the pandemic, we are reaching out through the miracles of the internet all around the world, and in some ways it's quite a much larger audience than we can ever have at the monastery. Our monastery is closed to visitors at this time because of the pandemic, etc. And so we've been forced to use this alternative resource, and it's turned out to be a wonderful thing to make ourselves available. And there's a number of us, there's 10 of us living at the monastery in continuous residence. And many of us participate in behind the scenes on this, and I'm just merely the front monk for this. My name is Ajahn Sona, and you can make comments, questions in the sidebar, and hopefully it's on the topic somewhere to do with Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, something along those lines, and I will endeavor to answer those questions. And we have our trusty moderator and questioner, Pia, over there. So let's go to Pia and see what the first question is.
Ajahn, our first question is from the live chat. Banana Comedy asks, how can you sustain a life with Dhamma? Being only 18, I notice I can easily go back into either doing bad decisions or going back into fear easily. What should I do? Find others who are older?
Well, I do like your handle, Banana Comedy. At least it's not a banana tragedy. So let's make sure that it stays Banana Comedy. And now I know a number of people who have gone into the robes at 13, 12, even 8 years old. So you can at 18 isn't that young, and you can make decisions. And if you want to sustain a life which is moving towards well-being, health of mind, etc., then you need to associate with the wise and spend your time close to those who have Dhamma. And it's one of the blessings that you can give to yourself. So there's a sutta. A sutta is a discourse by the Buddha. And this one is very famous throughout the Theravada world. It's called the Mangala Sutta. Mangala means auspicious blessing. And in Buddhism, we're not asking God to bless us. We're asking ourselves to bless us. He's saying, don't put responsibility on some invisible deity or something like that or somebody else. You're responsible for your life and the decisions you make. And one of the first blessings you can give to yourself is not to associate with the foolish. And then after you've done that, you've left the foolish behind. And by the way, a little phrase, it's better to go alone than with a fool for company. So it's pretty drastic. Lots of people are very compassionate, easygoing, and they tolerate the company of people who are toxic, eroding their sense of well-being, misleading, etc., not trustworthy, and they do it out of friendliness, etc., but it wears on you. And so it's important to realize that it's not just about getting along with people. Sometimes you have to go away from certain people because it demoralizes and reduces your capacities and energies for the good life. So sometimes you can't find wise people, but you can always go alone, away from the foolish. And then your next job is to find even one wise friend. You can always find some wisdom in books and in modern times in video, etc. It's really good to actually talk to somebody face to face or be with them for a period of time who are wise. They conduct their life in an upright, moral, a lucid way, that they have generosity and kindness in their intentions towards you and towards others, and that they have a body of knowledge that they can refer to. So this is the second blessing. If you can perform the first blessing, simply leaving the foolish behind, and then even if you have to go alone, and then the next job is to find the wise. And the third task is to find a vision of life which is worthy of your utter respect and devotion. And then you're into a beautiful phase, and it can't help but go in the right direction towards well-being, happiness, reduction of suffering, all of these things. So at 18, that's when you make the choices. And if you don't, then negative people will bring you down. And you're not, probably at 18 and inexperienced, you're not able to bring them up. There are certain very developed personalities. The Buddha himself really could impress people who are living a less than skillful life. And he could help them, he could bring them up without being tainted by them. But many people would like to do that. They want to bring up the foolish, but they're really not capable of it. What happens is that the foolish deplete their energies because the foolish have no problem with wasting your time. So they have all the time in the world to fritter away their lives, and you, being an earnest fellow, perhaps might want to improve their quality of life, but you will end up having wasted your time. So let those who are very advanced and grand in their personalities assist the foolish whenever they make an earnest effort towards that. And by the way, so in order to help people, they have to be coming towards you. We can't reach out and chase them. They need to be coming towards you. They have to show earnest effort and energy towards you, otherwise you waste your time. So this is a little summary of tactics in life, and it's advice I would have appreciated at 18 myself. Okay, Pia, let's go on to the next question.
Ajahn, our next question is also from the live chat from Jonathan. Ajahn, I have read in some Buddhist circles that psychedelics, such as DMT and magic mushrooms, are acceptable as a tool for spiritual development. What say you?
Yes, I've heard a lot about this, and in fact, I'm 67 years old, so I did live through the 60s. And what came before the 60s actually was the 50s. And in the 50s, and even back to the 30s and the 20s, psychology, Western psychology, started to take an interest in mind-altering substances. So you'll see even Sigmund Freud was a great fan of cocaine. He wrote something called the Cocaine Papers. So he thought it was quite good. He didn't realize the side effects of this. And then other psychologists, including William James, the one who established the Harvard Department of Psychology, he also experimented with marijuana and some of the native mushroom resources. And that continued on, and of course they were trying to use them as therapies, and they explored them, and they would go in and out of style. And then in the late 50s, LSD was discovered, and was sent out. This was discovered and sent out to various psychiatric and psychology departments because they didn't know what to do with it. What was it? Is it useful in any way? And then experiments became popular in the late 50s, actually, in psychiatric institutes. In Canada, where I am, there are 2 or 3 psychiatric institutes received this stuff called LSD, and psychiatrists and psychologists took it themselves and experimented with it, and then they gave it to patients as well. So there's a period of experimentation, and it was supposed to be good in this way, but it fell away, and then eventually things became illegal. So the experiments with this are intermittent, inconclusive. Some people say that they benefited from it. Some say it shouldn't have been given to them because they have a tendency to psychosis, instability of personality. So there's some pernicious, maybe even dangerous side effects sometimes on certain people. So it just can't be given out wholesale. Some say that it was profitable, but usually in the context of right association, that somebody, they were with somebody who could help them in a positive direction at the time. So this is the way the native drug cultures operate. It's a psychotherapeutic and religious experience in a cultural context, and if you just take it out of that and try to do it in a basement apartment in Chicago, it's a whole different thing. So we don't use we don't experiment with things like that in the monastic orders. There's a very strict proscription against using intoxicants of any kind that distort or that reduce your mindfulness. And whatever may be said about hallucinogens, your mindfulness is not fully present with them. They might guide you in a different way, but it certainly weakens your capacity to be fully clear and cognizant at the time. So we don't use them, and there are various historical theories that somehow in the early days of Buddhism or that somehow drugs were involved, some mushrooms and so forth, but there's absolutely no evidence or indication of that in the suttas or in the rules of conduct for monks. There's absolutely no report of any kind of use of hallucinogens or anything like that. So, but there is a commitment to a very radical, more or less the most intense psychotherapy you could ever endeavor on. To become a monk or a nun is a continuous commitment to radical psychotherapy, but without any use of substances, hallucinogenic substances or anything like that, because it's more effective and you gain control and you can maintain it in all situations. And it's a wish. It's a magic wish that somehow you can just take a drug and it'll perform the same thing on the weekend. It's just not going to happen. You might get shifts of perception, new insights into life, but can you maintain it? Is it at your command, etc.? And so this is a substantial difference there. But it's a very lively topic, and it's on the forefront of the burners in all kinds of circles these days. And the reason is that people are really seriously looking for reduction of suffering in their life. And I don't dismiss their attempts to help themselves, because it's just not possible for everybody to become a monk or a nun and live in a supportive, ongoing, therapeutic community. It's just not possible. And so I'm very sympathetic that people attempt to improve the quality of their lives. But I can't say that it's a necessarily a good idea to use these hallucinogens. There are all kinds of circumstances and caveats that are required for this kind of thing. So I wish that everybody pursue their sanity and their well-being, because if you read the statistics in the modern West, in the first world nations, it's staggering how unhappy a huge portion of the population is, to the point of wishing to not exist, and of course immersing themselves in intoxicants as well. So opiates and intoxicants, suicide attempts, addictions, gambling, all kinds of these things are indications of gross unhappiness in the general population, and it's really too bad. And there are ways of dealing with this, and there are proper ways that are helpful, and so one should investigate it. And so a live stream like this, Q&A, and a reference to the encyclopedia of videos that I've posted on YouTube that are accessible anytime, 24 hours a day, anywhere that you have internet, and they're free. And those are ways of guiding yourself, if you don't have access to monasteries, to guide yourself towards a greater sense of well-being and happiness. So that's the response for now. Pia, next question.
Ajahn, our next question is from Robert from Munich, Germany. Could you please talk about Vedana, translated as sensations on the body during meditation? Equanimous observation of the arising and passing of body sensations are of great importance in the Goenka tradition. It would be wonderful to hear your take on this subject.
Yes, the Goenka tradition, Mr. Goenka learned the technique in Burma, and the technique of body scanning for sensations, sensations in the body, Vedana, which is one part of the four foundations of mindfulness. So the four foundations of mindfulness begin with mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, that's Vedana, which you're referring to, mindfulness of the mind, Chitta, and then mindfulness of Dhamma structures or Dhamma categories. And all four of them are important to fulfill the intention of right mindfulness, the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path. If we remove mindfulness from the Eightfold Path, we will get different effects as a result of the application of attention. So we can attend to all kinds of things in all kinds of ways. But the Buddha has a very specific idea in mind about what mindfulness is supposed to be accomplishing. And that's why it's called not just mindfulness, it's called right mindfulness. Mindfulness within and applied to the Eightfold Path, the Buddhist Eightfold Path. So we have all kinds of mindfulness practices these days, but if they're not coherent, if they're not a substantial part of the Eightfold Path, they may be of interest, they may be of profit, or may be of use, but they're not what the Buddha was after. So this attention to the sensations in the body, scanning that, moving the mind up and down in the body it seems to be the Goenka method, primary method. It's actually not specifically mentioned in the suttas. Certainly awareness of sensations is mentioned, but like a systematic scanning from the feet to the head, etc., going back up and down the body, being aware of these bodily sensations is not. There's no particular description of this. awareness of sensations is. But so it's turned into a particular technique or method, and it seems to be the exclusive method in that. So there's a wide variety of methods and techniques, etc. And I think that it's important that people who are exploring the Buddhist path understand there's a very large number of teachings and approaches that the Buddha gives systematically in the suttas, and he doesn't give just one method to everybody. He gives multiple methods, and some people may not be doing any scanning of the body or continuously paying attention to the sensations in the body as part of their exploration of the Eightfold Path. So it's one kind of option, not exclusive. And the next issue is that people make a mistake of applying the idea. You can be neutral and a mere observer of the bodily sensations. You can do, and probably you should be. However, people often apply this to emotional feelings, where you're observing anger, you're observing your desire, etc., in thinking that you're being detached about your anger, etc. Now, that's a totally different area and should not be confused with bodily sensations. Bodily sensations are one thing, and you can observe painful feeling, a neutral feeling, and a pleasant feeling with detachment. You can't observe your anger with detachment. And anger is almost always accompanied by unpleasant feeling. Sensate, the feeling in the body is unpleasant. You can know that with detachment, but you can't know the anger itself, the emotional quality, the negative emotional quality, with detachment. Because anger is what is meant by attachment. You can't be both detached and attached at the same time. What you are is perhaps at least aware of your anger, and not perhaps approving of your anger, but you are angry at the same time. You're not two people. A psychiatrist or a psychologist or a monk watching somebody who's angry can be detached from their anger. They can be perfectly unmoved or at ease with their anger, but not your. You can't be a detached observer of your own anger. You are angry, you are attached, and it's a matter of degree about how aware and how much control you are exerting over this condition. So this is a very, very important point, which a lot of people are confused about. They believe that the practice of, sometimes which is called vipassana practice, which is another, it's really almost a substitute for mindfulness, and both are somewhat misunderstood. To vipassana just means to see in an extraordinarily clear way. And you can't be extraordinarily clear about your anger. If you were extraordinarily clear about your anger, you wouldn't be angry. So you're not extraordinarily clear. You are not vipassana. You are not hyper lucid about your condition, because it wouldn't be there if you were. So this is a very, very important area, and I go into it in great depth under a whole series of talks called Right Effort, which is the sixth factor of the Eightfold Path. Please go to my YouTube channel and listen to these talks on right effort, and I'll explain how the sixth factor, right effort, has been overlooked and not understood and not explained, while portions of mindfulness have been overemphasized without the little prefix right mindfulness, sama sati, and that it involves all kinds of other aspects to it. So this is it's a much larger and richer context which I would put these practices in. And so the Goenka exclusive focus on sweeping and so forth is a very a sort of silver bullet technique, some sort of technique that cures everything. But I would suggest that one looks at the whole of the Noble Eightfold Path as the teaching of the Buddha and not omit any aspect of it. And then you will have a comprehensive understanding of this. Okay. Let's go on, Pia.
Ajahn, our next question is from the live chat from Sumana from Alberta, Canada. Her question relates to the portion of the Mangala Sutta that speaks to helping one's relatives and to be blameless in action. She says, I get very tangled in this as the only living parent of adult children facing difficulties. It seems it may be that the current life of mine is to be in service to their needs and care. Am I misreading the message here?
Well, it's not exclusive. In order to take care of others, you must take care of yourself. You know, if a doctor gets sick, then nobody will be helped. So the doctor, in the midst of, well, you can see this in the pandemic, that the medical staff are wearing all this protective clothing, and they're trying their best not to get the disease that they're treating. So whether one likes it or not, one cannot just abruptly go amongst the sick unless you can maintain your health. And so otherwise everybody goes down, everybody sinks. So this is the essential necessity, is that one cannot simply take care of others because one won't last that long if they do. And then who will take care of others if their caregiver is not well? So whether we like it or not, we have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. So I have people coming, sometimes mothers, and sometimes even just shortly after having given birth, they come to the monastery for a period of retreat, and they're quite often feeling very guilty about this, and sometimes their family resents that they're going somewhere. But this is the way this is how you give your family a gift. So I'm giving you a gift, my friends. I'm going on retreat. How is it you are giving your family a gift by going on retreat? Well, because if I don't take care of myself, I won't be able to take care of anybody else. I'll run out of steam. And this happens. You see, people, when they are in a family situation where there's a number of people who are not doing well, the person who is struggling to hang on, hold it together, sometimes they just leave. And then that's because they can't manage it. So they were afraid to take a break, so they end up being broken. So whether you like it or not, you have to take a break. The doctor has to go home and sleep. If you've got a brain operation coming up and you're really drowsy, I don't know whether I'd want somebody working on me if they're drowsy. I want them to be awake, clear, happy, well. And they will do their best job, and it's not in conflict. So the more demands that are made on a person, on you, the more one has to find benefits, holidays, personal care, support from others to compensate for that. And there's no other way of doing this. When people don't take care of themselves, the whole thing falls apart. So this is very good Buddhist advice. And the blessing of attending to, it is very nice sometimes when family and relatives are in hard times to lend them a bit of money, give them a bit of advice, help them move, go and help lifting a couch. But by the way, if you're a little woman with a bad back and your relatives want you to help move, it's not a good idea to go lifting couches. Doesn't matter how much money you save, it's just not a good idea. And so you have to understand, so I'm not in any way helping by damaging myself in these helps. So it's never meant that way. It's meant to be appropriate, what is necessary. Saving money is not always the best idea. Sometimes spending money is a better idea. Having others help is a good idea. Referring people to other sources for help is a good idea. So there's a number of ways of helping which are not self-destructive. So this is a fantastic area. I could talk for hours on this. I mean, this happens all the time. In the end, also, the big vision of things. This isn't a movie. The ending isn't always happy. A substantial portion of the population doesn't make it. They finish this life without having overcome their difficulties or problems, and they die. And that is reality. And somehow in the midst of that reality, rather than the movie that ends well, we have to maintain our well-being and happiness in the midst of the fact that failure is a regular thing. The story ends in tragedy, doesn't end well, and we are fully allowing that reality to be present to us without being swept away in it. So that's called equanimity and loving kindness, rather than extreme pathos and tragedy. We're not going to be swept away in tragedy. We're going to say, look, this is the way the universe is. I didn't make the universe. I don't even approve of it, but I'm not going to be a fool and argue with it. That's the way things go. So that's the big vision as well behind all of this activity, is that one must remain balanced and equanimous, in touch with reality, and not swept away into tragedy. Yeah. Next question.
Ajahn, our next question is from the live feed from Jeff in Worcester, England. Hello, Ajahn Sona. Does nothingness lead to somethingness, or else what is there after all?
Well, Jeff, how are you? Nothingness, in most philosophical systems, nothingness does not lead to somethingness, and somethingness never leads to nothingness. So where nothing is, something is not. Where something is, nothing is not. We can apply this to life. There's a saying, this is a realization by a Greek philosopher, which I endlessly repeat and make people realize something. It's that where death is, I am not. Where I am, death is not. If death is nothingness, then, and I am somethingness, then the two never mix. They don't lead to each other. Nothingness, first of all, can't lead anywhere. If it had any process to it, it wouldn't be nothing. It would be something. So there is no relationship between something and nothing. Sometimes people get confused with the word nothing. They turn it into a kind of something. There's a philosopher, I think Wittgenstein, talked about people talking about nothingness as kind of like Mr. Nothing. If you talked about Mr. Nothing, then you would realize how weird that would be. Mr. Nothing is a person. You've turned nothing into something. So we're never going to experience nothing. We're never going to know anything about nothing. The only thing we're ever going to experience, and the only thing we ever need to concern ourselves with, is something. Something. That's life. Life is a something. And the only thing we concern ourselves with is existence, life, experience. And we can safely say not to prepare yourself for nothing, for absence. No point in reflecting on it, no point. There isn't anything there to reflect on. You will never be nothing, etc. So this is good to clarify for people. The issue, the problems, and the solutions are all in the realm of existence, of somethingness. None whatsoever. There's no profit whatsoever about thinking about non-existence, not preparing for non-existence, or any of those things. Set those aside as useless activities. Okay, on we go from the polarity of nothing and something.
Ajahn, our next question is from Brian in Powell River, British Columbia, Canada. I am an aspiring monk currently working with Tisarana Monastery on the process of ordination. I currently live with my family and try to follow as much of the Vinaya and complete monk precepts as is possible in my daily life. Is there any advice you could give me on how to go about my practice as I wait for this avenue to open up due to COVID delays? Anything that is particularly important or pitfalls I should especially watch out for? I practice formally on a regular basis using your methods.
Yeah, it's a lot like preparing to go off to university, isn't it? Leaving your family behind, and how should I prepare myself to go to university, etc. Well, the first thing is you're preparing to be a monk. A monk's life is suitable in a monastery or in solitude, but generally speaking is not very suitable at all in a family situation. So if you're in a family situation, attempting to be all that fully monastic is very, very awkward. Sometimes monks have to visit their families, spend a little time with their families, and it's always it's always inappropriate and awkward. Nothing is suitable. So we manage, but it's just not a very good situation. So for a person who is not a monk but aspires to be, I wouldn't introduce much more than in your household life, I wouldn't introduce much more than the 8 precepts. Sometimes even the 8 precepts, which means not eating after noon and so forth, are even very awkward to keep in the context of a family. You make yourself a bit of a nuisance. And it's not really necessary that you take monastic precepts into your life until you're in a monastery and where it's appropriate. So this is to relax a little bit about this, not be overzealous and cause more, because many of the precepts that monks follow are they're not moral precepts. They're precepts about how to live in a dormitory, how to live in a specific, very specific community. It's almost like living on a military base, about who you salute and whether you polish your shoes. And it's the same kind of thing. You'll see hundreds of rules on military bases that don't work so well outside of that. And so the hundreds of rules that monks follow are not applicable to the family life. So relax. I would say that in preparation, though, that you should reduce your exposure to media, perhaps in entertainment, because you're going to experience a vast reduction of stimulus in the monastery. You're going to have a lot of time without stimulation, without distraction. And the mind needs to get used to this ahead of time. So you just, instead of watching sitcoms with your family, just go off to your bedroom and have some quiet time, meditate, go for walks in the forest. If you can read suttas, you can read stuff that is edifying and uplifting or helps you understand things. You can watch my videos. So instead of watching TV with your family, go and watch my YouTube channel. And realize that you're just in a waiting room here, and it's not necessary to follow all of the rules of the monastic community at this time. Next question, Pia.
Ajahn, our next question is from the live chat from Sumrit. Ajahn, how do you deal with a family member who turns aggressive and uses abusive language towards other family members, such as parents, due to their conflicts and differences?
Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable situation to be in, isn't it? And it's very unfortunate. The first tactic is just to leave the room, if possible. To simply not be in the presence of that, just to find the moment it begins is to vacate the space. So, because you're not obliged to be there and listen to this stuff. You just leave. People, when they're angry, they're not open to correction, and sometimes you can't even calm them down and so forth. And they're putting you in that situation rather than them taking responsibility and realizing, oh, this is making everybody uncomfortable, isn't it? Well, they're indulging themselves. They're flying off the handle and they're indulging themselves. And if the family puts up with it, then they're cooperating. They're cooperating with allowing this and not producing some strong negative consequences for that person who flies off the handle and gets angry. There should be consequences. It's not okay to inflict this on everybody. So the first thing is, I do not wish to remain in the presence of people who can't control their emotions and fly off the handle, so I will remove myself. So, and I will do the opposite. I will find people, voices, books, videos of people who are full of loving kindness and concern for your well-being, and I will prefer the company of them rather than the company of even my family if they're totally unskillful. The first blessing, again, is not to associate with the foolish. And if it's family members who are foolish, then it's you don't have to remain in their presence. You're looking for absence from that. You're moving away from the foolish, even if you're related to them, and towards the wise. So perhaps in the family, there are a few wise people that you should prefer to hang out with. And if you can't find them within your family, then you must look outside your family. This is, that the Buddha himself left his family in the middle of the night. And in the Sangha, the family of monastics, that kind of behavior is not approved of or tolerated. And if you can't straighten yourself out, you find yourself pushed to the side because other monks and nuns won't put up with it. They won't remain with you. They are entering the Sangha for wise company, not foolish company. So there's strong negative result. For a person who can't control their emotions, is angry and greedy, you will be pushed to the side. There's a saying the Buddha says, the ocean will not tolerate a corpse. It washes it up onto the beach. It's a curious saying, isn't it? It seems to be a fact. You see corpses washed up onto the beach as if the ocean doesn't like corpses. This means that the pressure of the waves, there's a relentless pressure to wash somebody who has no skills out of the community. They will be washed to the margins. The community of sane, good-natured people will endlessly will force that person who is dead in some ways, is a corpse to good nature, has died to good nature, to the nature of goodness, will be washed out of all community. They will be washed to the margins. And that's what happens. You'll see it again and again. People who cannot cooperate and develop goodwill will be washed to the margins. And so this is the nature of things. Pia, next question.
Ajahn, our next question is from Johan from the live chat. Ajahn, any tips on how to handle loneliness?
Yeah, so first of all is to examine it. And I remember reading Thoreau, Walden. So if you're not familiar, Thoreau is an American who spent a period of time in more or less his own hermitage. He wasn't a monk or anything. He was a lay person, very intelligent, and he built himself a little cabin on the banks of Walden Pond near a place called Concord, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston in the 1830s and 40s. He spent a few years cultivating solitude and aloneness, and he talked about the idea of loneliness. He said, first of all, just examine the thing. He says, what is it to be alone? I mean, how close can you be to another person? When do you feel not alone? When you're a foot away from another person? 2 feet? 3 feet? 5 feet? What if they're in the same room? Now, you notice that babies, they actually, when a person leaves their field of vision, if their mother goes into the next room, it's as if their mother doesn't exist anymore, and they feel very, very lonely. But as you get a little bit older, you're comfortable with the fact that they're in the next room. You don't actually have to see them to still feel connected to them. So this is a bit of a psychological trick. We are in a universe that you have nothing but company in. This universe is full of beings. Some of them are visible, some of them are not visible to you. Some of them are in this room, some of them are in the other room. But you are surrounded, my friend, with endless beings. And millions and billions of them have nothing but goodwill towards you. They have goodwill towards all beings. They know how difficult life can be sometimes. So just think about this. There are millions of humans on this planet that have nothing but goodwill towards you, having never met you. And if they met you, they would meet you with goodwill. So you're surrounded by people with goodwill. And one of the benefits of those people that have goodwill is that they're not lonely. So you need to cultivate goodwill for all beings, and you won't be lonely anymore. And especially for those who are lonely, say, I understand what it's like. May you be well. I have a heart full of goodwill for you. And suddenly your loneliness vanishes. Loneliness is a version of separation. It's to feel alone. But you're never alone. You can never be alone. And but it's always in your head. The decision to feel alone or in the company of others is strictly all in your head. Other people and poets talk about the feeling of never so alone as when in a crowd of people. Never so fulfilled and full of loving kindness as when alone. So it doesn't have much to do with where you are. It has everything to do with your mind and its attitude. Union, the feeling of being united, is exactly the feeling of loving kindness. The feeling of hate and anger is exactly the feeling of separation. So the negative emotions, anger and greed, separate you from everybody. The feeling of positive friendliness unites you with others, and the feeling of loneliness dissolves. So you can be, and I spent many years myself as a hermit, alone. And whenever your mind goes to certain states, you feel alone and lonely. And whenever it goes to another state, you feel not lonely. It evaporates. You feel in communion with all beings. And the situation hasn't changed. Yesterday you were alone and felt lonely. Today you're alone and you do not feel lonely. You feel in communion. So after a while it dawns on you, oh, it's all in my head. And there's only one way out of loneliness, and that is towards a psychological attitude of communion. The other way out of loneliness is simply the absence of concern with it. Loneliness are thought processes. So when you're not thinking about it, you're not lonely. It's only when you're thinking lonely thoughts that you are lonely. And if you are asleep, sound asleep, you're not lonely. Even if you're on Mars by yourself, you're not lonely. So notice it's a function of the mind. Do not think those thoughts. They are not real. Choose other thoughts. And this disappears. Okay. Pia, let's have another question.
Ajahn, our next question is from Juan from Liverpool, United Kingdom. Dear Ajahn, is classical music, piano, detrimental for jhana practice and concentration, and how did you personally let go of your own musical skills?
Well, yes. In general, the Buddha is not thinking that music is evil or something or immoral. The Buddha is just saying there is the music. I say sometimes I used to play the guitar with 6 strings attached. Now I play the guitar with no strings attached. So it's a form of, it's what people temporarily get with music. So a man came to the Buddha one time and he says, I'm a musician. Maybe he played the sitar or the something like that, the veena or the sitar. These are beautiful Indian instruments, which were around at the 5th century BC, amazingly. And he says, I heard you talk about meditative states called Samadhi or jhana. And you said that in this Samadhi, you're completely absorbed and you experience joy of the mind, of the heart, and you experience ease of the body. I'm a musician, and that's what I feel when I'm playing music and listening to music. I feel completely absorbed and I feel joyful and at ease. Am I experiencing Samadhi? Is that what Samadhi is? And the Buddha says, yes, that is what Samadhi is. But it's a kind of Miccha Samadhi, meaning the wrong Samadhi. Because the Samadhi in the Eightfold Path is called Samma Samadhi. It's the right Samadhi for spiritual progress. Now, this is actually a very important story. Because if you love music and you absorb into music and you feel a joy and ease in music, you can say, oh, that's what they're talking about with meditation. But I'm supposed to feel that when there's no music. When I'm not listening to music, when I'm not playing music, I'm able to experience the joys that I experience in music, but without the music. So now you do know what they're talking about with the the factors of deep samadhi, or what is called the jhana, especially the first jhana, has the same emotional texture and quality as the best musical experiences, but without the music. So it's not an enemy. And if you do experience, when you're deeply absorbed in music, you lose track of time and so forth. Everything is, the world fades away on you, etc. So this can be profitable for you. You can use that experience to say, now, can I do this without the music? In the midst of music, by the way, there are rests. It's not all notes. There are places where there's space in the middle of music. And notice that your musical feeling involves the intuition of rests and like silence in the midst of music. And you're carrying the feeling of the music through those silent moments. And they can accentuate the music. They can make the music even better. So just take more and more rests, and then eventually you won't need any notes at all. It'll be the sound of silence, the sound of non-music as a musical experience. So this is kind of what happened. As for me, it was the more I listened to the silence, the less I was fascinated by the music, and it just fell away naturally. In a somewhat disturbing way. Like for me, I invested many years of training into being a professional musician, and that's what I made my living at, that as well. And suddenly to feel that I don't want to do this, I have other things that I like better, and I'm not motivated to do this. That's a very awkward experience. You think, like, I put a lot of years into this, and it's my livelihood. What if I don't do this? What will I do? So for musicians who start meditating and going deeply, they may experience this, the falling away of what they used to cherish. And it can be awkward, but the spiritual value is higher than the music value. So one must just go on and continue in that direction. And it can be inconvenient. Yes. So that's a little exploration of this question. And I wish you well with that. And you will see perhaps a conflict between your indulgence in music and the aspiration to the finer meditations. So we'll end this Q&A today, this live stream, and we wish you well. And we will be back, hopefully, next week at the same time and the same cyberspace. See you then.